Good stuff today.
Indeed.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Where is everyone today? I mean, what up? Everybody's taking an early Father's Day weekend. We're not. We're back here at Law and Legitimacy. What's up in North Carolina?
And I can't believe it. So for the I don't know, the first like 3 days of this week, I thought it was the day later, and then now I'm surprised somehow that it's actually Friday.
No, I know.
It's
It's
been that
been
kind
that
of
kind
week.
of week.
It's been that kind of week. It's great
Give
here, though.
everybody.
It's finally starting to
Uh,
feel a little like summer, Norm. Starting to feel a little
yeah,
summer.
you mean 100 degrees in the shade?
Yeah, we're getting there. We're starting to threaten to be North Carolina here in a moment.
Even the palmetto trees beg for mercy. Is that it?
We don't really do palmetto here in Greensboro. That's more of a South Carolina thing.
Gotcha. All right. Well, I'm a northern boy. What do I know? Hey, so programming note. Mike and I were talking about next week. We've got some things we want to discuss with you, including a fascinating new law review article by a federal judge named Victor Bolden. But it turns out that I'm on trial in Stamford, and the least convenient location in Connecticut. And we are unlikely to be, we will not be on the air Monday. We'll try to get Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday in, depending on the court schedule. We will definitely be here on Wednesday, on Juneteenth. Those of you who've noticed
that.
What?
I said we wouldn't miss that.
Yeah, we wouldn't miss Juneteenth. But those of you who noted a certain friction in the air, a certain wildness in the debate, a certain FU in the train you rode in on, that's just life. That's just two guys struggling with differing perspectives and evolving points of view. And we appreciate those of you who tune in to hear it. We strive for civility. Sometimes I fail. I made an offhand remark yesterday that I think might have rubbed Mike the wrong way, and I wanted to apologize to him. Many years ago, I was speaking into a tin can, talking to about 3 listeners, 2 of whom happened to be a cat and a dog, and the other one was me listening to myself. And Mike said, "You want some help with this thing?" And it became a show. So I yesterday in a heat of asshole or a-holism, I may have said, "You don't need to tell me about this show. I created it," or something. It may have been an idea that passed between my ears, but it was Mike's brain that made it blossom. So Mike, I wanted to apologize and thank you for all that you do to contribute to this show, because without you it would be nowhere, and I know it. Thank you.
Certainly, I don't feel as though you owe me an apology, but I accept it nonetheless, Norm. And I think I told you yesterday that I own every bit of the antagonism that it took to get you to even say that. So, but
Well,
that's what grown men
it is
do.
what it is. Politics is antagonistic. There are homes where, religion and politics don't get talked about at the dinner table. I suspect those are the kind of people that watch sitcoms, and I don't watch sitcoms for a reason. And when I talk about religion and politics, I generally get in trouble, and I'm trying my best to find a middle ground. So news today that the Sandy Hook families want to seize Alex Jones' online accounts
Here, let me pull up the article for you.
as assets to be liquidated through bankruptcy. What's the law? Candidly, I don't know the law. I mean, I'm not a bankruptcy lawyer. I currently continue to represent Alex Jones in the appeal of the underlying judgment in Connecticut, and we are awaiting an appellate court ruling that could come out any day now. But from a 30,000-foot view, here is what I know, and I'm informed in part by discussions with bankruptcy lawyers who are knowledgeable about the case. So it's not quite just navel gazing, but it's 2 steps removed from that. Jones and Free Speech Systems entered into the bankruptcy court looking to reorganize. That is, they identified potential creditors and they sought to negotiate a way to structure his debt in such a way that both Mr. Jones and Free Speech Systems could operate with payment plans promised, and those plans contingent on performance. Without performance, I guess liquidation would be the answer. But the practical consequence of these, I guess they were Chapter 7 filings, was that he would be able to continue to do business. There were negotiations, and I'm aware of the numbers. I don't know that they've been reported. There were significant negotiations, and from time to time, there appeared to be members of the plaintiffs' class who were willing to accept some money, and then there were hardliners who said no, never a dime. And in the absence of a consensus, it appears that negotiations on a settlement to the bankruptcy have failed. And the result is that Jones, apparently, Mr. Jones, has apparently moved to have his assets liquidated to satisfy the creditors. I believe, with respect to free speech systems, I believe there may be a hearing today. And Judge Lopez may, if I've understood the rumblings in the past, may move to permit free speech systems to be liquidated. What that means, that I believe, is that all of the assets, except those assets which are exempt as a matter of law. So there's a homestead exemption, for example, in Texas, a very generous homestead exemption. Every asset that is not exempt from bankruptcy law will be capable of being seized by the creditors in the creditors committee to satisfy their debt. And so this move surprises me. It is certainly consistent with the view of the hardliners in the Sandy Hook camp and those who are opposed to Jones, that the goal of the litigation wasn't simply to compensate people for the harm that Jones' speech caused in his denial that there were actual victims in killings in Sandy Hook, but that the goal was to silence him. And so apparently in a filing, the families asked the judge to make clear that Jones's @real Alex Jones account on X, formerly known as Twitter, will be among the assets turned over to a court-appointed trustee in charge of liquidating Jones's assets. It has 2.3 million followers, and it's no different than a customer list of any other liquidating businesses. Sandy Hook families argued. That's an interesting argument. And Mike, I don't have any experience in bankruptcy law, but
sorry to cut you off there, Norm, but it seems like that's a really disingenuous argument. If we're to take it at face value, that's to assume that anybody who would take over the liquidation of that account would be able to monetize it in a similar or same way that Alex Jones is able to monetize it. So if you're thinking about, it's no different than a customer list of any other liquidating business, that in and of itself treats the followers, or that list of customers, as they want to call it, on the real Alex Jones account, as having any interest at all in doing business with whomever would acquire that list subsequent to the liquidation, and that doesn't track.
No, it doesn't. I tried to imagine this morning, the first posting, hi, this is the Sandy Hook Collective, where, I don't know. I don't know if they'd shut it down, but it does raise an interesting question. It's my understanding that Jones is prepared to continue to broadcast by vehicles which apparently he and his bankruptcy lawyers or counselors believe are ways that would make him unreachable by his creditors. And if, in fact, any social media account that he owns can be seized, then he'd have to arguably appear on someone else's social media account. And that social media account then would regard Jones as a contractual, it would be in a contractual relationship with Jones, and they would defend their own social media account as their property. The Sandy Hook families would then have the ability to seek to attach any income that Jones derived from that contractual relationship. But my understanding is there are ways in which a person can be paid, for example, by way of annuities, and that the annuities may or may not be reachable by bankruptcy. Bankrupt creditors, or by creditors in a bankruptcy. Again, way beyond my pay grade, but an interesting move in the continuing battle to silence Alex Jones.
So the hearing is today in Houston, and Norm, you were talking about the posture of the hearing earlier. So the court is actually expected to convert from Chapter 11 to Chapter 7, which authorizes liquidation in a
I got it wrong, from 11 to 7 rather than 7 to 11. All right.
That's correct. And so this narrow issue is whether upon it's expected that conversion will occur. But the question here narrowly is whether the plaintiffs are able to argue that at real Alex Jones on X is an asset to be included for liquidation within that broader list. And so again, I think that there are a number of issues that I see. I asked the question, what is the law? Because Norm, I also have no idea what the law is. I'm not even sure how to triage which law as applied, because there are multiple. Would be most important. However, I do see several vulnerabilities. One is what we've already talked about. Another is, what is X's obligation to a court sitting in bankruptcy and determining that an account that is it clear that individual holders of an account or a handle on X own that digital real estate, so to speak. And I know I'm kind of using some words here that may not be real or terms of art, but is it necessarily the case that account is Alex's to give up? Right? I mean, certainly he could sell access to that account, his username or whatever, to someone else who would take it over. But again, it's not a foregone conclusion that his followers would stay there. And I certainly don't think that the bankruptcy court is going to want to go through the intellectual exercise of determining whether any account that Alex were to establish thereafter would also be subject to that debt collection.
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I can see it both ways. I mean, I can see that it's him. It's him broadcasting. He creates the account. Twitter hosts it.
He's not property, right? Fundamentally.
But it's intellect. But what he puts over it is his intellectual property. And does that intellectual property capable of being seized as an asset? And the vehicle through which it is distributed. Don't know the answer to that. Vicky Driver, I saw the name in the story. She is his primary bankruptcy lawyer. Probably put in a call to her later today, and I'll report to you all next week or the following week on that.
Sounds great. Vicky, according to that Reuters article, just as a parting shot there, Vicky says that this has never been about getting money, that it is about silencing Jones.
Oh, absolutely.
That's her. And I do think that based on what we've just discussed here, Norm, that seems to be the bigger picture within all of this, that if there were any interest really in debt collection, that this wouldn't be an issue to be discussed.
No, I think that, there are those who have political ambitions involved in this case. I wouldn't expect to see, I wouldn't be surprised to see a Senate candidate arise, and I have someone in mind, I'm not going to name the person, to try to fill Richard Blumenthal's seat 4 or 5 years from now, when Blumenthal retires. And what better feather in your cap if you are running from a certain perspective, in the ideological perspective, than to say you took Alex Jones down, or you tried. Alex remains a unique voice. I am intimately aware of his comments on the Sandy Hook case, having defended them. He was defaulted. He suffered a catastrophic multi-million, $1.5 billion judgment as a result of the default and court rulings. That's on appeal. We'll see what the appellate courts do. But independent of those Sandy Hook things, there's much that he says of value. About globalism, about the role of AI, about comments about the deep state. I part company with him to the degree that he is a conspiracy theorist. I've always thought that proper nouns don't have intentions, and conspiracy theorists seek to populate the world with forces they can understand and manipulate. I'm content simply to see the forces, AI, the development of the public health state, the development of a deep state. These are issues and real issues that I think Alex sheds light on, and the world would be a poorer place without him. So I hope the Sandy Hook families fail in their efforts to silence him. I feel bad for some of them. I feel that they've been used in a political fight and agenda that is beyond their individual suffering. And as a result, everyone now will lose perhaps a unique American voice.
Dirk from Texas, take your time, my man. You're from the South. You don't have to listen at 1.5 unless you just really want to get into the real-time conversation with us. But good morning. Good morning to you. Allegiant, just as a last question here, Allegiant News asks, is it personal bankruptcy or business only? I think it's personal bankruptcy, but I don't know that that necessarily forecloses his business from liability or being subject to the payment of his debts.
There are 2 bankruptcy filings. And they are joint and severally liable, meaning one is both. You know, if one entity can't pay, the other one will. And so the 2 entities in bankruptcy are Alex Jones's personal estate, and the other is Free Speech Systems LLC. Free Speech Systems LLC is the entity that does business as InfoWars. So there are 2 filings. Alex has voluntarily apparently said liquidate me. You know, he's prepared and apparently believes he's got the assets to withstand the liquidation effort and live a meaningful life. FSS has a debtor in possession and has a corporate restructurer. I don't know that it has a debtor in possession. It has a restructuring officer that's responsible to the court and is a separate entity. So there are 2 filings. Well, you know, let's go from the semi-depressing to the semi-comedic. What in the world is going on with Kenneth Little Woody Copeland?
So we've got 2 videos here, and I think the second one is even funnier, but also perhaps more impressive. But this is the one that I sent to you yesterday, and I think compelled you to suggest it as a topic today. So we talked about Kenneth Little Woody Copeland yesterday as perhaps the witness that was taken into an ex parte meeting with the judge, and you can go back to yesterday's stream. If you want an in-depth dive on what's going on in the Young Thug RICO case, please see Phil Holloway ESQ on X at Phil Holloway ESQ. He's done a brilliant job. You can also follow at Thugger Daily for these clips. So both of those accounts to me in parallel are probably where I'm getting 90% of my information. I'm going to play this clip though, Norm, because I'm really interested in your perspective as a criminal defense attorney and your initial reaction to hostile witnesses. So here we go.
Everything. The police kept coming to grab me. Every time they grabbed me, I had a different story for them. I know 100% facts, and I'm telling you now, I was not truthful. I was saying whatever they wanted me to say. I was saying whatever I could come up with. I was trying my best to convince them that I didn't do nothing, that I'm an innocent person, and that people put their hands on me. When they ask me about any of these things, you sitting here keep asking me step by step by step by step. And I'm telling you now, because you asked me, was I being truthful? Okay. I know I wasn't being truthful.
So is your testimony today that you lied in every interview that you did in 2015?
See, you the way you asked me that, I don't recall what I was saying in the interviews, but I'm telling you now, when they was questioning me 2015, 14, whenever they was questioning me, I was lying. I was making up stories. So when they were asking me about this right here, I was making it up. When they were asking me about this right here, I was making it up. And when they was getting me and they would let me go, I'm just telling you.
Do you recall telling every detective?
Every time they got me, I have told the police, I tell y'all whatever y'all want to hear, just let me go.
Do you recall telling every detective in every interview, you got to believe me, I'm telling y'all the truth? Okay.
That sound like me.
You know,
That sound like me. I love the head nod right before it. That sounds like here's the just quickly so we can take these in tandem. Here's the other video and another. It's just a minute long, so thank you all for hanging in.
It never crossed my mind.
So how were you able to tell Detective Gaither that Nut and Thug was cool?
Because they're questioning me and I'm trying to get them off of me, and she asked me questions about Nut and Thug, I guess, and I'm telling her whatever she asked me. Let's say she asked me a question about the sky. I'm saying, yeah, I seen the sky. It's blue. Whatever she asked me, I'm gonna agree to that. I'm gonna say whatever she asked me. If she asked me about this reporter right here, I'm gonna say, yep, she's sitting outside me with white tennis shoes on. I'm gonna say something. Just because I want her to believe I'm telling the truth. That I want her to get me out of jail.
What, she has on white tennis shoes, don't she?
Don't you got on white tennis shoes? She got on Chucks.
Right, and they white, right?
What color your shoes is? Okay. She got on Chucks.
So you telling the truth.
What color your shoes is? She said they white.
Right, so you're telling the truth then.
Well, it depends. See,
Yeah. Norm, we can't hear you. You're muted. Unmute that mic, my man.
There comes a point in every lawyer's life where I think you just want to throw your hands up and say, why did I take this case? Is that the prosecution trying to rehabilitate the witness there?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
So, that I haven't followed the Young Thug case. I'm aware, obviously, that it's a RICO case. It's one of the longest lasting cases in Atlanta criminal history. It's now even longer than the Proud Boys trial, and it's stuck now in this procedural morass created by Mr. Copeland. Mr. Copeland apparently last week was on the stand, was taking the fifth, wouldn't testify, was held in contempt. The court, I believe, didn't think he had a valid fifth. The state then sought to immunize him. There was an ex parte meeting in chambers where he apparently said, hey, I shot and killed somebody. Well, that'll get you the fifth. And this was a meeting that was that it took place outside the presence of defense counsel. I think Brian Steele is defense counsel. He got himself held in contempt by the court for relaying his knowledge of the information. Apparently that contempt order has been stayed by order of the Atlanta Supreme Court. The defense bar turned up in Steele's support. And we now have a week of Mr. Copeland's testimony. And as Allegiant News tells us, this is direct. We've not even gotten to cross. And so apparently we've had a week of this, and now we're going to have another week of that. And the combination of this and that, I think, is going to be a reflection of nihilism. A reflection of a person who's willing to say whatever is necessary to make the moment pass, but doesn't really have any underlying reliability. And it's unclear to me why the state persists in keeping him on the stand. He has made it clear that he's lied. He's now probably going to face a perjury prosecution. And that perjury, and there are very few perjury prosecutions in the law. Perjury isn't just any misstatement of fact under oath. Perjury is a deliberate intent to lie about a material fact, a fact that matters. And so here is a witness who has been called and has spoken to the police many times. The state has relied apparently on his statements to police to conduct their investigation. And of Young Thug. And now he's on the stand saying, I lied to the police every time I talked to them. I think the prosecution is likely to regard his statements on the stand today as a lie and to prosecute him for perjury. And so, I don't know the backstory with little Woody Copeland, but he appears to be a soldier for the crew. And, when we first started talking about law and legitimacy, I used to use the following example, and I used to use it with juries when I argued police misconduct cases. If a man stops me on the street with a gun and demands my wallet, odds are I'll give him the wallet because I'm afraid of him. But if you dress that man in a police uniform and you give him the badges and indicia of authority and he asks to see my wallet and he's got a gun out, I'll still give it to him because I'm afraid, but there'll be a little added increment of recognition of his authority. I may say he misused his authority. I may choose to litigate that later. I may or may not challenge his right to do this, but I'll recognize him as someone different than a Young Thug supporter in gear. And what we see here, frankly, is, in my opinion, the breakdown of civil society. I mean, the norm is you come into court, you take an oath, you tell the truth. Here's a guy who's basically saying there ain't no truth in this, and this proceeding is a farce, and I'm going to treat it as such, and there ain't nothing you can do about it.
So Brandon Lesko, thank you for the tip. He offers that that Lil Woody Copeland actually has immunity on the stand, Norm. So
are you sure about that, Brandon? Because in every immunity agreement I have seen, a person has what's called transactional immunity. They have immunity for what they say on the stand, and it cannot be used against them. But no, I've never seen a witness be offered immunity such that they can get on the stand and lie. Brandon, I'd like, it's a great tip if true. It's a hell of a deal if negotiated. I have my doubts.
And this, Mari says, that's why the ex parte meeting is so important. Allegiant News also offers that he has a promise from the district attorney not to prosecute for perjury. So again, So Daisy Girl says that immunity came from the secret meeting, in my opinion. Again, this is why he's actually on the stand. And of course, Nick Dev, you're correct, right? The Fifth Amendment is still pretty important here. Just because you're being offered immunity for state level crimes doesn't mean that you can't be charged federally. And Norm, I'm sure that you could offer something a little more on that topic, but not sure that it's necessary here. The one thing I did want to say, though, perhaps as an alternative to your view of the nihilism, I do agree that from an individual perspective, this appears to be an individual that is not bound by what polite society or civil society or a pluralistic society would regard as predictable and consistent and reliable norms, that he is willing to act as a chameleon of sorts and bend to whatever the situation needs, whether that is through his speech, through his conduct, whatever. However, I do think that makes him sophisticated in a way.
Yeah.
And I think that what we got was a window in that small interaction between Lil Woody Copeland and the court reporter there.
She looks charmed by him, doesn't she?
Oh, and what we saw was actually fairly sophisticated, because he gave an example to the state as to how he would answer a question if pressed by law enforcement. And the state took the bait by saying, well, didn't you say the truth? Aren't her shoes white? And he said, what color are your shoes, directly to her? And then characterized them as Chuck Taylors, Converse, PF Flyers of old, right? Chucks. And she said, but aren't they white? And he said, what color are they? She says, they're white. She says they're white. That is a very sophisticated way of, I think, from an evidentiary perspective. And it also is revealing of how he might conduct himself out in the field, right? How it is that he maneuvers in such a manner as to be involved in a case of this visibility and notoriety. So I just offer that to say that.
But as a witness, his trustworthiness is close to zero.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is that if the state will attempt to rehabilitate him, that the theme of that rehabilitation should be pointing out how sophisticated he actually is based on this testimony.
There's the judge in the upper right-hand corner with LawPod Daily as a speaking box to him. But I'd love to know what's going through his mind. Like, right now, should I have gone to medical school? When will this case end? What's for dinner tonight? Can I hold myself in contempt? Is retirement here? Because this case seems to be sputtering to nowhere. And it's very, very, very hard for me to believe that the state is going to continue on in this vein. But I guess 89, 90 days in, once you've started a fight, you don't stop it. So
let's move on. Thank you, Daisy. And I give myself credit for that observation, but that's why I showed the clip. I think that many people will see the first clip that we showed, and they'll get the comedic routine out of that. But I do think that there is an ego to Mr. Copeland that shone through there at the end in that second.
Oh yeah, he's a fighter. He's gamey,
and he is to be taken seriously, right?
I'd love to cross-examine him. I think that he would be a lot of fun to cross-examine.
Let's talk about this.
Yeah, so secret recording at the Supreme Court Historical Society. A woman approaches Justice Alito and Justice Roberts to talk about their role or their view of the role of, I guess, religion or Christianity in politics. And Alito privately confides that he thinks that this is a Christian Republican that we need to become reacquainted with our foundations in order to prosper. Roberts, while not necessarily disagreeing, says that he has his doubts about the efficacy of that, and that pluralism and respect for the views of others and their deeply held core beliefs is more likely a winning strategy for the United States. Say what you will about the surreptitious recording. It'd be easy to condemn that and avoid the discussion. It's a sleazy thing to do, but it's done. And so the insight into the justice's thinking is what interests me. There is no doubting that the United States is steeped in the Judeo-Christian tradition from the founding documents throughout our history and through the various religious awakenings that we have endured every 50 to 80 years. And I've said before, I think we're ready for another one. But, Robert's points are well taken as well. We are now more of a pluralistic society than we've ever been before. And what is the role of godliness in America? Is there a role for a particular view of godliness in America? I'm inclined to think there is. And I'm inclined to think that the Judeo-Christian tradition is the moral capital from which we derive so much of the strength of our individual institutions, and that we've spent down that capital, and that to the degree that we seek to root a society in a bare notion of expressive individualism, we take a gamble that the foundation that was created painstakingly over centuries and is going to be able to contain the sort of passions that an expressive individualist culture yields. And I can't help but wonder whether the current frictions and divisions in the United States somehow reflect this deeper debate.
Yeah. Just so we're clear, I think we were going to talk about secret recordings last week. These were actually posted on Monday, Norm. So
okay.
I haven't actually taken a listen, but just we read critically the Times article here. These were leading statements by what is her name, Lauren Windsor. Leading statements, and it's her quotes that says, "I think the solution really is like winning the moral argument," she told him, according to the edited recordings. She said, "Like people in this country who believe in God have got to keep fighting for that, to return our country to a place of godliness." To which Justice Alito responded, "I agree with you. I agree with you." That's the extent of his comments in that.
I didn't realize
right?
it was that limited. I didn't read the article that
Right.
carefully.
And I want to be very, very, very clear with people about this. And I am going to bring up the context for this with the secret recordings. This is an article from 2021. So Lauren Windsor, this is her MO. And this is an article the Times did on Lauren Windsor three-ish years ago. So just to give an idea of who we're actually dealing with here, Norm, this isn't something that, this is an invite only. It is not open to the press. So this gala is for Historical Society members only. In order for Lauren to have gotten access to this, she would have had to have been very, very, very prepared and have played the long game with respect to gaining access and entry to the Historical Society for the gala. And there, according to this article, there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of debate about the breach of journalistic ethics and integrity as it relates to her conduct here. And I wanted to at least give that background, because I know we said it happened. It's not good, but that would sort of belie our obligation to engage on the substance. So, but I did at least want to bring that and frame that. Justice Alito has been under the microscope in the last week and a half for even expressive conduct that his wife indulged, right, via the flags that flew at their homes. So I think it's only fair to at least say the recordings weren't him affirmatively stating that
Fair enough.
he believed that we needed to return to a place of godliness. It was him in a concurrence saying pretty indirectly, I agree kind of thing. Now on the pluralism,
All the more reason not to go to social events and get buttonholed by people you rarely know. I can't think of the number of times where somebody said, "Rah, rah, 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 rah," and I'm like, yeah, that's a good point.
Well, and to your point though about Chief Justice John Roberts, I think that maybe he was a bit more poised than Alito was, because the quotes that they brought into the article from his recording are I can't help but to look at him in an even more positive light. Quote, she asks, would you want me to be, or hold on a second, that's for the people we elect, that's not for lawyers. So in response to her saying, to giving the same line of questioning, the same line of sort of declaratory statements that she gave to Alito, he responded with a question saying, would you want me to be in charge of putting the nation on a more moral path? That's for the people we elect. That's not for lawyers. Of course, that's true. Ms. Windsor pressed the Chief Justice about religion, saying, quote, I believe that the founders were godly, like we're Christians, and I think we live in a Christian nation and that our Supreme Court should be guiding us in that path. To which he responded, I don't know if that's true. And then he added, I don't know that we live in a Christian nation. I know a lot of Jewish and Muslim friends who would say maybe not, and it's not our job to do that. The Chief Justice also said he did not think polarization in the country was irreparable, pointing out that the United States had managed crises as severe as the Civil War and the Vietnam War. So again,
those are extremely hopeful remarks from the Chief Justice.
I think the same. I was
rare that we end on a note of optimism on this show. I feel like it's playing some music,
Well, I also want to acknowledge Justin Wright again. Man, you've been leading the charge for us this week with the in-person tips on our live streams. I cannot thank you enough.
Justin, can you send us a note quickly? How do you know? I'm going to sound like the judge. I won't hold you in contempt if you tell me you can't tell me. But how do you know that happened in that first meeting?
Yeah, send a note to pattispodcast@gmail.com, if you will. That's the best email address.
That's an extraordinary offer. They were desperate to have this man's testimony. And to your point, Mike, about his being a savvy operator, that may be the whole purpose of the states putting him up there, that they don't really care what he says, that they want to show that the organization was brilliantly led by people with chameleon-like sensibilities who could be one thing on Monday, another on Tuesday, and whatever was required on Wednesday. And they could use this testimony as an illustration of that as part of some larger narrative. There are times where I have put witnesses on, not because of what they say, but because of how they look and the effect that they'll have on the jury. And this could be one of those witnesses.
Allegiant News is offering that the answer to your question is that it was in the motion to remove the judge. And Brandon Lesko is also saying a lawyer put it in an affidavit.
Okay, great. Thank you, guys.
So thank you. Let's see. I hope everybody has a wonderful Friday and a great weekend. Same to you. Happy Father's Day, Norm.
Thank you.
I know we'll probably talk in between then and now, but also thank you to everybody who has joined us, and happy Father's Day to the fathers among us. I know I have a few watching, and one in particular. Happy Father's Day, Dad.
AMF, yo. See you. Oh, and so we'll see you next week at some point. Again, it'll be an abridged schedule. Trials, unfortunately, reality sometimes interferes with law and legitimacy. And the reality of a trial in Stamford is mine next week. So we'll talk to you at least Wednesday, maybe more if we can. Happy Father's Day, everyone. Be well.
If you've made it this far, make sure you're subscribed to Law Pod Daily on the red platform, Law Pod Daily on the black platform, and Law and Legitimacy on the green one. Please like this video and share it with somebody. Share it with your dad. All right, Norm. We'll talk next week. We will try to get a note to everybody about what our schedule will be next week with Norman trial. We will definitely be here Wednesday, no matter what. And then we're going to search for Tuesday, Thursday, Friday-ish. So anyway, good weekend to you all. Norm, see you later.
Ciao. Bye.